Welcome back to Veterans Forum, a program by veterans, about veterans, and for veterans and their families. I'm your co-host, Ray Chattery, with Jerry Devlin. Bob West, our other co-host, is home recuperating with a broken ankle, and unfortunately, he had a setback. Friday, he had surgery, and we wish him well. Our goal is to provide important information on legislation, benefits, support, and activities for you and your family by interviewing leaders in our community. Jerry, who do we have with us today?
Well, we have Jeffrey Kendrick, and I would like to express my own sympathies with Bob West. He's really missed on this show. Of course, there are three of us, and Ray and I are Marines, and as a result, Bob calls himself the brains of the show, and he's not with us tonight, so we're on our own. And we're really happy tonight to have Jeffrey Kendrick with us, and he's executive director of an organization with a very unusual name. And when I first heard of him as McVet, and I was thinking that perhaps it was McDonald's was giving out free hamburgers and cheeseburgers on November 11th every year. But it really stands for the Maryland Center for Veterans Education and Training. And it does remarkably good work for veterans who really need a helping hand. Mr. Kendrick is he's a retired veteran like Bob West. He's retired from 20 years in the United States Air Force and served all over the world, and went to work with McVet 12 years ago as a counselor, and has worked his way up now as executive director. For the benefit of our huge viewing audience, and we do broadcast coast to coast from Allen Pond to Foxair Lake, I'd like to have Jeff Kendrick perhaps explain something about what McVet does for veterans and why it is such an incredibly important organization.
Thank you. Quick background on myself and how I actually came to McVet. And for those that do understand, McVet stands for the Maryland Center for Veterans Education and Training. It's been incorporated now for 20 years. And in the 20-year time frame that's been open, we've had 9,000 veterans who have come through our door. But the uniqueness of the program is, and I think it alarms sometimes us fellow veterans to know that there are 50,000 homeless veterans that roam the streets of America currently at this time. And there is not a program that provides the comprehensive services that McVet does. I have to tell you, my personal story is that upon retirement from the military, I touched down at BWI, got off the plane, and I started looking for a job, for employment. I went to a job fair, and I happened to meet some people there who were from McVet and asked me to come down for a job interview. Went in and had no idea. In fact, I never equated homelessness and veterans in the same sentence. So it kind of alarmed me to know that there is actually veterans who have served their country, who have fought bravely beside us, and have ended up, due to some kind of traumatic incident, ended up on the streets of America. And fortunately, there is a company, an organization called McVet, where a vast array of comprehensive services are provided for veterans, that with the ultimate goal being, upon completion of the program, you're either receiving education, employment, and with the ultimate goal of actually getting permanent housing, which is a very vast, which to me is a great way to turn around and serve those men and women. And once again, it has always been emphasized, some type of traumatic incident happened to make a person up homeless, because personally, I do not think an individual chooses to be homeless and live on the streets. But fortunately for us, we have a program like McVet, and 7 out of 10, it's been estimated, that have come through our program are deemed successful when they go through our doors.
Now, if I was a veteran coming, what qualifications is there to get in the program? Any restrictions?
No real restrictions, other than the fact that there are 2 questions that are asked, and they're very simple. Are you a veteran, and are you homeless? And of course, from that particular point on, we can do the research. We have benefits counselors there that can secure a DD-214 to find out, to verify. And the other unique portion of McVet's program is, regardless of your character of service, we're still able to provide funding to be able to make sure that you receive services.
What about a person is on drug or alcohol? Are they screened or?
Initial screening is not done once you come in the program, but one of McVet's tenets is that drug and alcohol is not allowed during the duration of the program. So what we do is, a person that comes to the program is subjected to your urinalysis or breathalyzer at any time during the time that they stay. And I don't think I mentioned that your actual stay at McVet can be up to 3 years. But we do have on-screen, on-site counselors that provide actual training, because we have to take care of those problems that brought the individual in off the street. And you're right, a lot of that does pertain to alcoholism or drug addiction, mental abuse, physical abuse, some sexual trauma. Those ideas are first actually addressed by, we have licensed level social workers that are there that take care of those, a whole myriad of those problems, and actually address it in its stages from the beginning to the actual end. Another sideline of that is that we ask all of our residents, and we call up our veteran students because they're going through a training program. But for the first 90 days that you're there, you must attend a Narcotics Anonymous or an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting during duration. Then after your 90-day period, 5 days a week during each period that you're there, you must continue to attend meetings that expounds upon the 12-step recovery program.
Now, do they have jobs? Do they go to school? I mean, they just don't lay around all day. I'm sure that they have duties and such like that.
Great question, great concept. You have to come visit McVet, and you'll see we have actual dormitory-style residents that are set up there. In fact, our emergency shelter, which we call First Platoon, looks like an old military-style barracks. So anyone that comes in our program has duties. We have details every day. We serve chow 3 days a week. But the education and training aspect of the program is very unique. After you've gone through the initial 90-day period, you then are given a skills assessment to find out what type of employment or job that you actually need on the end result. Then once you've gone through that particular portion of the program, then you are either set up for formal school or you go to educational training, which we receive through funding from Department of Veteran Affairs or through HUD.
Yeah, because I know a couple. I'm sorry, go ahead.
We, in this show, we've tried very hard to encourage women to join the 4 veterans organizations in Bowie, which provide most of our listening audience. What's the ratio by gender?
That's a great question. Well, right now, McVet is a 250-bed facility in total capacity. We have 17 units for our women veterans that would stay there. And I have to tell you that it is an underserved and underutilized portion of the program. In fact, McVet's goals for the future is we'd like to make a model of our entire program, the entire continuum, and set that up just for the women veterans themselves, along with another aspect, which would be those veterans that are homeless with families. We think that's a portion of the program that still has not been addressed. And so we look forward into the future of being able to set up a McVet that will address the same continuum of care, women veterans and homeless veterans with family members.
We've tried very hard on this show to convince women veterans that the veterans organizations, the 4 here in Bowie, are not just a bunch of old geezers telling war stories at the bar, that we do provide services, like particularly the disabled American veterans, which really is its reason for existing. And we do provide services, and a great many women find it uncomfortable to joining what they perceive, and I think incorrectly, as a male-dominated organization with a lot of Neanderthals who aren't welcoming them in, and we're not. And that's why we're so happy to have you here to explain that women are entitled to the same services as every other veteran.
Couldn't have been said much better. You're absolutely right. And one thing McVet does is make a distinct difference, not in so much in living arrangements, because our women are separated from our men, but the same continuum of programs is applied regardless of your gender. So the women have to get up like the men. They have to get up at 5:30, have to perform the same details, and they go through the same rigorous training program that the men do. So that's the only distinct differences in terms of living. But I can honestly say, and I'm glad that you did bring up the DAV, which is a strong, strong supporter. All of our veteran service organizations are very strong supporters of McVet, and I'd be very remiss if I did not mention the fact that with our funding, if we did not have the support of these veteran service organizations, we would probably be very much struggling to make our yearly budget.
Yeah. Since we were talking about women, what would happen if a woman veteran was homeless and had children? How would McVet be able to serve them?
And that is the most alarming aspect of our program, is that we can't service any women who have the children. And a lot of times what we'll find is the women veterans that come in our program will have to take the children to stay with some family member. But what we have found is those women who come into our program are much more aggressive in terms of what they want for services from the program. Average stay at McVet is 18 months, although you can stay for up to 3 years. But we find when the women come in the program, because they've had to leave and separate themselves from the family, they come with a much more, let's say, focused agenda when they come in the program, and seem to get through our program quite well, and are always very successful when they come through our doors.
How many of the veterans over the 20 years have gone to college and either got associate's degrees or bachelor's degrees?
Numbers, we don't have it actually broken down, but I can tell you that we have set up a database where we track all the men and women who come through there. We'll follow them 1 year after they've left our actual program. But we have statistics that show that 7 out of 10 have been deemed successful when they come through our doors. But success can be judged in different ways. It could equate in either education, or it could equate in just getting employment. Right now, currently, our average hourly wages for an employee is at $13.80 an hour, or it can be the fact that they just want to, let's say, reunify with their families.
Now, on that hourly wage, do they have to give anything back to McVet?
They do have to give because we have HUD subsidized housing. So actually 20% of any of their actual income is actually given back to is given towards rent.
Okay.
Do you, most of your, what do you call them, patients or
Students.
clients? Students. Let me ask you about your, are they mostly young veterans who got out of the service and kind of just didn't catch on to something, weren't as fortunate as you are and I was, I guess?
Sure.
But, or are they older veterans who've fallen upon hard times?
Actually, the demographics has changed. The age has actually changed, where when I first started with Vet, now I've been there for 12 years. You're right, it was an older veteran that we saw coming through our doors. But now the Vietnam era veterans, basically there's very few that are in our program. We find more younger veterans coming through our doors now. We've had some cases of where veterans have separated at Thurgood Marshall BWI, and within months they're coming through our door. So we've seen a change. Much younger veterans coming through that still require those services that Big Vet does provide.
Then you have a situation now developing that we were in the Marine Corps and the standards weren't as high as they are now, and that you could pretty much stay in the Marine Corps if you wanted to. The old, you know, the kind of guys they make movies about with James Cagney or John Wayne,
Sure.
who get promoted to Master Sergeant, then get busted and they're privates again. Now re-enlistment isn't automatic, so I imagine there are a number of people sort of thrown out in the streets, really. I mean, who don't qualify for what the standards that the services have now.
Very, very true. And you know, the uniqueness, and I think every veteran has a story. Every veteran has a unique story. And sometimes, you know, sometimes I used to think to myself, they're about maybe not having a good first sergeant, a good commander, a good group commander. Maybe I could have ended up in that same aspect. But of course, I did have veterans that looked out for me as I came through the ranks and went through the services. But you're absolutely right. There are those veterans who come through their doors that are much younger, that have just somehow made a wrong turn somewhere, that end up in that traumatic experience that puts them out on the streets. And if you do not have programs such as McVet, there's no telling where they would actually end up.
Now, one thing you could put a good plug in right now, because we have a good viewing audience here in the Bowie area. You have your 5 and 10K run coming up, and maybe we can go into that, as the people in Bowie may want to, because we have a lot of runners in Bowie. We see them running all the time. They may want to come and participate in your program.
Thank you. Our 5K, 10K, this is our 20th annual 5K, 10K. It's always on Memorial Day weekend. We run through, and it's our major fundraiser. You know, and we of course receive funding from some federal government grants, endowments, and fundraisers. But our 5K, 10K run, which this year our goal is 1,000 runners. We start running, if you're familiar with Baltimore, we run from City Hall through downtown Inner Harbor to the Science Center for the 5K, and we go all the way up to Fort McHenry for the 10K. And it's a run, but it's not a competitive race. So we have a lot of groups that will come out and just want to walk and just kind of enjoy themselves. We have Honor Guard there, and we'll have a race marshal and other things there. So we're really inviting everyone to come out. It'll be on May 24th. The 5K starts at 7:30, 10K starts at 8:30.
Now, is there any entrance fee or anything?
Entrance fee is $25 for both events.
Okay. So do you have some people that run the 5K and then go on to the 10K?
Some of those real athletic types can probably run both
Serious
events.
runners.
You want to run
Not
both
guys like
races.
us.
But guys like you, no, we'll just kind of walk the whole course. But you do have guys that come out and they run both races, so they
So
always have good
technically, you
times.
have a 5K run, and then if they want to participate, they have to do 1 to 10K run. It's not a 5 and then 10.
Well, but there are some that will actually, they'll finish the 5K, just switch a shirt real quick, turn around, and then run the 10.
Okay.
So we have some events that
they're
will
technically running 15 miles.
They're
or 15Ks, right?
pretty close to
Okay.
it, yes. Yes.
When my dad was young, there was a guy, they used to have 75-mile races. And this guy used to run the Boston Marathon. And he would start in Boston and run 26 miles and then run the rest back to Boston.
That's pretty good. I like that one. But
Yeah.
yes, we we have found that a large majority of the supporting community for veterans not being competitive runners or not being very athletically inclined, just because they want to support an organization that provides service for homeless veterans, will come out and faithfully attend our event. So we're just asking everyone to come on out.
How does Maryland compare in homeless veterans with other places?
You know, Maryland has a sizable homeless veteran population, and it's based on the fact that we have so many military installations in this area. Unfortunately for us, it's just a fact of life that homelessness is very prevalent in the United States. And of course, when you're in an area such as the tri-state area here, with a lot of the military organizations in this area, Maryland is very comparable with other states. Well, not so much comparable, but other than California, and I think and I want to say probably up in the upper east, far west, there may be other states, but right now Maryland is one of the forefront areas for homelessness among military veterans.
You know, Hawaii has
Hawaii,
a huge problem, not veterans and non-veterans alike. I guess if you're going to be homeless and sleep on the street, there's a practical advantage to being in Honolulu rather than, say, Buffalo.
Sure.
Or Juneau.
Sure.
Or Maine, where they have 2 seasons. They have winter and they have the 4th of July.
You know, there's a distinct difference, and in fact, I'm glad you brought up about the change in the weather. During the cold weeks we just had, we had a period which was called Code Blue in the city of Baltimore. 13 degrees or below is a period when veterans will come in off the streets. McVet expands its capacity to an additional 60 beds, 30 for men and 30 for women. And during this last cold period, we actually had full capacity on men and women who would come in from the streets, who would actually stay for us during that period. At that time, of course, they're offered an opportunity to come into the program, and some would take us up on the advantage, but others would just decide to go right back out on the streets again.
Yeah. Now, one thing, I'll give a little background first. Three of our veterans organizations meet at the DAV and the Marine Corps League and the Veterans of Foreign War. Well, we had very meager membership until we start serving food at the meetings, and all of a sudden the membership pretty much doubled of people attending. You're getting pizza.
I mean,
and
the active membership.
right. But so, how is the food at McVet, and how is it prepared? Who does it, and such?
Food is one of our selling points of the organization. We serve over 400 meals a day. We have dining facility cooks that actually work at McVet. We have stipend positions for some of our residents there who have an affinity to actually cook. We are actually inspected by all the city inspectors that would inspect all the finer restaurants in town. And what we find is sometimes a person may not want to come into our program based on the fact that they're coming in to, let's say, work on the recovery model, employment jobs and everything else, but they may come for the food. And so the food could be one of the initial selling points of the program, but initially they will eventually stick around and actually work within the guidelines of the program.
Yeah. Now, so we may have some that would like to come up and see your facility. We give the address and such, and hours, and if there's any restrictions about visiting McVet up there in Baltimore.
We are located in Baltimore City, 301 North High Street. We're open Monday. Actually, we never close. Monday through Friday is our actual days for visitation. If people like to come by, we like to open up our facility for tours. We're very, very proud of our organization, and we're very proud of the work that we've done for the men and women that come through. So we encourage and invite visitors to come down and actually see our facility. And people who want to come down, sometimes we ask, what about volunteer opportunities that may be available? We have groups that will come through sometimes and do landscaping. They may want to paint the building, although when you come through, you're going to see a very spotless building. But we can always find volunteer opportunities for those that would like to come down and give their time and effort towards the organization.
Okay. Is there any other specific that you'd like to cover as far as anything about the facility, like who funds it and how it's funded, any kind of, to let the people know, is there any kind of donations? Do you take clothing and such like that? Well,
let me give you a unique story about the building itself. It used to be the Dixie Solo Cup factory when it was founded its inception. The city of Baltimore actually sold the original executive director, Colonel Charles Williams. They sold him the building for $1. So we have a huge building, over 110,000 square feet, that is still standing to this day, still withstands everything that goes on. What we have now is we're looking for, as we progress and go into 2015, is to provide service for those that we feel are underserved, and that would be homeless veterans with families, and those women who are also out on the streets now. So we're trying to make sure that we open up our doors and expand our model to take care of that particular aspect of our population.
How much does city, state, and federal government put in as far as funding?
Our budget is close to $4 million annually. 30 to 35% of that comes from city, state, and federal funding. The rest is done through endowments, grants, and fundraising.
What kinds of fundraising, other than your track meets, what other things do you do that we?
Well, what we'll actually do is we'll go around and speak at all of our veteran service organizations. We go around and actually put advertisements, and we're on the website. We're on Facebook, and we have a Twitter page. We do everything we can possibly do to go out and actually meet people. Right now, we've actually started to go out and do things in terms of a major fundraising gala, which is in the beginning stages. That's going to actually be planned. So we're just trying to see those kind of things that we can actually do. We're always open for new and exciting ideas. Our grants manager that we have now is finding new grants for us constantly to find out ways that we can actually bring money into the organization.
You'll be going to a lot of the conventions and such, aren't you?
Yes, definitely. Heading up to all the conventions. I always call it the convention run. It starts, I think, sometimes in late April, and it'll run sometimes all the way to the end of July. So we constantly making appearances at all our conventions because, as I said before, we have a lot of our veteran service organizations that are heavy contributors to the organization.
Do you have very many volunteers, or is there anything way that the veterans groups can, or even civilians would like to volunteer to help?
Well, for those who would like to come down and volunteer, I would probably say the first thing you might want to do is come down and see our facility. Actually come and walk through our doors, and then you can see where you might want to see where a volunteer opportunity could be. You did mention about our donation for clothes. We're always open for clothing. We have a full-service laundry room where we provide clothing not only for the veterans that come in off the street, but we also have people that we call our drop-ins, and those will be individuals who happen to be out on the street for the day and just want to come in for a shower, a shave, a change of clothes, and a bite to eat. A lot of volunteers will come in and want to work in our clothing closet. Some may want to go in and work on our serving line. Others may decide they want to paint our facility. So we're always open to volunteer opportunities within the organization.
Yeah, the one joint veterans meet that we had here in Bowie, we had a representative from McVet, and he was saying about if a person comes in off the street, they get their own towel and washcloth and soap, don't they?
They do. They do.
Now, do they take that with them?
They do. They take everything that they want with them, and of course, along with the change of clothes. You'd be surprised at the amount of veterans who will come in for the day, just want to get out of the elements. But while they come in, shower, shave, a bite to eat, and then they'll turn around and go right back out again because there are some that have just decided they're much more comfortable out in the street. But yes, every time they come in with all those things they take back out with them also.
Very good. There was one thing I was going to say. Do they have a library, or do they have any kind of workshop, or any kind of, to keep them busy in the TV room, stuff like recreational?
We have a full-service recreation center. Pool seems to be the best. It looks like every man and woman comes in the program to shoot pool except for me. And so everybody shoots pool. We have Wii games now that have been set up for everybody. We have a Wi-Fi library, something that newly we had to implement for all of our veterans coming in. So although we find many of the veterans come in, especially our younger veterans, they all come in with their own PDA, laptops, mobile phones, and everything else they need. So we've done that, but we also get outings. We'll go to ball games. We'll go to basketball games to see the Wizards. We go out and see the Orioles and the Nationals. So we're always finding other things to keep people engaged within the program, because although we stress the fact that you're actually coming into the program to receive those education and training skills, you still have to have some recreational activities that are available.
What about video games and television, rec room type?
We have a couple of large screen TVs on all of our living quarter floors that have actually been there was a fundraiser done by one of the veteran service organizations that purchased all of those, but we do have video libraries, and we have a lot of tapes and DVDs and music tapes that the gentlemen will come down, men and women will come down and sign those out, excuse me, on a daily basis.
Yeah. One thing Jerry would be interested in, because I know that he has to pretty much keep abreast of what's going on judicially and such, and he's on email a lot. Mm-hmm. Do you have a email facility or capability there to where if a person comes in, they can use a computer to get on email, or they can bring their laptop or their or a tablet with them, or they can connect in and still be connected in case they want to be there for a little time?
That's an interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because I would have hated to leave that out said it. One of the new implementations I put in the program is that I'm now requiring all of our residents to take a computer proficiency class. So we have a computer lab that we have up on our 5th floor where we have 15 computers that are set up, and we have a contract with one of the local community colleges that will come by and do computer instruction. Basic computer knowledge along with an email account that's established. And what we found is that although there may be a little anticipation, I'm not familiar with the computer, but once we get these guys on the computer, we can't get them off of it. So that's something we have done. So we have computer labs that are available, and like I said, we have the Wi-Fi library where everybody has their laptops and they use that too.
Now, do you ever get people in to teach any kind of class there, like a computer class or such like that?
We do. We have a lot of instruction that will come down from volunteers on a vast array of skills. Some will come and talk about banking, how to maintain a checkbook, balance your checkbooks. We have others that will come through and talk about life skills, how to deal with life on life's terms. Others will come down and talk about job interview techniques, proper way to dress for jobs, a long list of volunteer services that are available. So I would also encourage your listening audience that if they want to make themselves available and like to come down and do a volunteer class, we're always open to that also.
One thing I was really impressed with, and at several of the conventions that I go to at the state level, the rep from McVet, you'll probably be doing this, will bring 2 or 3 of your students, I should say, with you, and they give a little story about there. What was one of the most successful stories that you know of that came out of McVet?
I've had a gentleman, and this was years ago, when I first started working at McVet. As I told you, I was a benefits counselor, not really applying myself to what I was going to actually be doing. But I had a guy who came through our doors, had actually been beat up on the streets of Baltimore. So when he came through, he was almost left at our door, had broken legs. And so for the first 3 or 4 months, he was getting around in a wheelchair. He got to the point where after he got up the wheelchair, he became one of our more focused leaders within the building. Took advantage of all the educational training, the things that we had offered within the program. And he stayed with us for almost 3 years. But by the time he had left our program, he had actually gotten employment with Northrop Grumman, where he became their web designer.
Is that right?
And we were always kind of trumpeting whenever we have to talk about individuals who have come through our program. He's one of the guys we bring up. But that's not to say he's the only success story. We've had a lot of our veterans that have come through our program now that have an affinity for culinary arts. We have guys who have been sent to Italy and other countries to learn how to cook a special cuisine, and they'll actually come back to do that. A lot of our women veterans have come through the program, and now they're with the CDL license, and they're driving 18-wheelers all over the country. So we have a vast array of people who have come through our program and many success stories. And we also plan to bring a lot of our veterans and our students that will be coming to all the conventions again this year.
Yeah, well, being Jerry's a judge, and is there any way that the judicial, do they, where they can make wills or any kind of legal help that we may not know about?
As a condition, really, of practicing law in Maryland, you have to do so much pro bono work, and it seems like if you could contact the Maryland State Bar Association, this could be one of their causes. And we do intend to have on this show at some time in the future Judge Phil Nichols, who's a retired Navy captain, and he's chairman of the Bar Association, has a committee on veterans law, which he chairs, and that he might be a good contact, or someone with the State Bar Association. But this, it's a scandal that a country as rich as this and as abundant in so many ways can have veterans. And veterans are different than they. When I joined the Marine Corps, I enlisted, but I was a sort of an involuntary enlistment. If I didn't enlist in the Marine Corps, I'd have gotten drafted in the Army. Now, everybody who's been in the service since 1971 is a volunteer.
Yes.
And the people volunteer to serve their country, and a country that can afford tax cuts for billionaires can't afford money for veterans, homeless veterans on the streets. Yeah. And that's why our respect for you and your organization is so great. As Father Keller said, it's better to light one candle than to curse the darkness. And you're lighting candles all over the place, and we're very proud of McVet.
Well, we've just been given the word by our producer and our cameraman, Tom Allen, which we want to thank him for this evening. And we're just about ready to wrap this up. And we want to thank you, Jeffrey, for coming and talking about McVet, because this is very near and dear to our hearts here next to Charlotte Hall. Thank you for watching Veterans Forum. We hope you and you have enjoyed the program and learned information useful to you and your family. Now, we ask you to get involved with other veterans, Bowie veterans, and actively participating in one of our veteran service organizations. Stop by one of your posts and call for more information. American Legion on Laurel Bowie Road, 301-464-9814. The Disabled American Veterans on Route 197, 301-464-8899. And these numbers are also on your screen, along with the Marine Corps League and the VFW. And to say the Marine Corps League, we meet at the DAV. Call my number, 301-249-5499 at VFW. Paul Conley at 301-262-3520. And again, thanks to our director, Tom Allen, for giving us another wonderful program of Veterans Forum.